Dr. Andreas Müller, General Chair of 5G ACAI und ACIA, so rum. Und er wird uns jetzt über 5G, über die Theorie und Praxis berichten. Bitte schön.
Ja, vielen Dank, Herr Strelitz. And I will do this in English, since we obviously also have non-German speaking participants, at least online, so it's a bit easier for them then. But good morning, everyone, and warm welcome also from my side. So, as Marco Strelitz already mentioned, my name is Andreas Müller. In my day job, I'm with Bosch, but today I will give a presentation on behalf of 5G ACIA, the 5G Alliance for Connected Industries and Automation. And I have the pleasure to also serve as the General Chair of 5G ACIA. And 5G has been discussed for quite some time already. So we started a couple of years ago with 5G ACIA. And the question is, when are we there? When have we achieved the goal to really make industrial 5G become a success? And this is something I would like to briefly discuss with you today and outline a little bit, so where we are on the industrial 5G journey. So let's start with a high-level view at the past, the present, and the future of industrial 5G. So when did it all start? And 5G in general basically started, from my point of view, around 2012. And it started with a lot of theory, right? These very early research and innovation activities. There was a European research project called METIS, and METIS laid the foundation for 5G. So during this project, the vision has been developed that we focus at the vertical industries, that we have low latency, high reliability, and things like this. So all this started basically in 2012. And then it took a couple of years until we got the first 5G standards, so what we call Release 15. So this was around 2017, 2018. It's 2 years because there was an early drop, there was a late drop, so also different flavors basically of the initial 5G standard. But the first version of the standard that really was called 5G was available at the end of 2017. And then it accelerated a bit, right? So 5G ACIA has been established in 2018. So we celebrated our 4th anniversary this year, bringing the IT industry and the OT industry together. Also Deutsche Messe then jumped on the train, and at Hannover Messe 2019, 5G was a big topic. We had the 5G Arena, which was a very nice partial event at Hannover Messe, with one hall equipped with a live 5G network, and there were many demos of different companies showcasing some initial POCs with 5G. And I think that's also something that would be great to continue maybe next year, so discussions are ongoing. Then in 2020, we got the next version of the standard, Release 16. And Release 16 is interesting because it is the first standard that comes along with many features that may be very relevant for the industrial domain. So this brings low latency, this brings time-sensitive networking, high reliability, native layer 2 transmissions, and things like this. So it has a strong focus on the industrial IoT. Also at the same time, the private 5G networks gained a lot of momentum. Initially, this has been triggered a lot by the manufacturing industry, but now it's also heavily discussed, and there's a strong interest from many other vertical domains, be it mining, be it agriculture, and so on. So here, private networks are very of high interest, and this is something that is still going on. So then, where are we now? And this did not just start today, but about 2 years ago, right? There are many test beds being set up, many proof of concept realizations being implemented. So people get their hands dirty and evaluate 5G with real-world applications and use cases. And 5G ACIA, for example, has established a testbed framework about 2 years ago, and there are many testbeds already ongoing. I will come back to that later on. This year, we got the next version of the standard, which is called Release 17. And Release 17 primarily brings some enhancements to what we have seen with Release 16 already. So even better support for private networks, for example, support for high precision localization and things like this. So also things that may help us in the industrial domain to realize more use cases and applications. And of course, we're also here today at CMM. I call this now the post-COVID momentum. I think we were all hit by the pandemic, right? So, and also this slowed some things a little bit down simply because you could not really meet anymore and so on. But I think now we are back on track. Also 5G SAE went back to having face-to-face meetings, and this will give the whole movement another push. And a big question, of course, is what is the future? And I will also try to say a few words on this at the end of the talk. So let's deep dive a little bit into the different time phases here. And first of all, I want to start with a look back. So in case that you don't know this yet, I hope I've mentioned this and presented this already many times, but there's still some people sometimes that do not really know what 5G SAE is about. So we've established 5G SAE in 2018 in order to bring all relevant players in the emerging industrial 5G ecosystem together. So these are the major ICT players, network operators, infrastructure vendors, chipset providers, and so on. But also the OT industry, of course, so the classical industrial automation specialists, end users, machine builders. And the goal is to jointly drive and shape the developments towards industrial 5G, which covers many different aspects. And I think so far we have done a decent job here. So this is what it looked like in 2018. We had a public kickoff event at Hannover Messe 2018 at the booth of the ZVI, which is our host organization. Still a fairly small family, if you want. You can see I'm still here, so you look a bit younger. The hairstyle is the same, has not changed much since then. But we started off with 26 founding members, and then we quickly grew bigger. We went international, so first anniversary in Hanover, went to Shanghai, we went to Paris, we went to Coventry, and more locations, and what got bigger and bigger, right? And then we were hit by COVID, like everybody else as well. That means from one day to the other, we had to switch to virtual meetings. I think we also managed quite well, but still it slowed things a bit down. But fortunately, we are back now to physical meetings as well. So just 1 month ago, we had a plenary meeting in San Diego hosted by Qualcomm. And I think everybody really enjoyed it a lot. It was great to see people again. Some members have joined for the first time. We also have organized a public workshop, so we invited also non-member organizations to discuss with us and to inform them, to educate them. We had the US government represented and so on, so this really gives it another push. And as of today, we are 97 member organizations. This group is still a bit smaller than before, right? There's still travel restrictions here and there, so it's not fully back to normal, but we are getting back there. So as of today, yeah, we have these 97 member organizations. That's always the logo slide, which gets more and more packed. There are still some spaces here available. And we are in discussions with other organizations, so I expect that we will reach the 100 member threshold very soon. So what I've done since the establishment of 5G SAE in 2018, first of all, we did a lot of work on use cases and requirements, of course. That's how everything starts. And here we had to sit together, right? So we had the established use cases from the industrial domain. We have to see, okay, with the new capabilities that 5G comes along with, what can we do? How can we combine this? What will the factory in the future look like that is enabled by 5G? And we looked into different domains, right? The process industry, discrete automation, intralogistics, also things like augmented reality and so on. And we then also brought these findings and the use case requirements into standardization in 3GPP via our member organizations. And I think we've really done a good job here shaping and driving the developments in standardization. Then we also had some early work on private networks. White paper has been published early on, which was a big success here, outlining different deployment models for private networks. The world is always not black and white, right? You can have a fully self-operated, isolated private network in a factory, but you can also have a shared model with a network operator, for example, where some equipment is shared by a public and a private network, or you can also just have a network slice, for instance. So different flavors. We've analyzed this. Just recently in San Diego, we started a new work item focusing on private networks again and deployment models, looking more at it from the user perspective, and of course, looking at also what has happened since then, because there was also quite some progress here. So there's more work and more results coming up next year probably. Then a big topic always is shop floor integration. That means 5G will, in most cases, never be a standalone technology in the sense that all communication in a factory or so is only driven by 5G. It will always be a combination of different technologies. Wired communication will remain very important. We will have other wireless technologies here and there. And we have to make sure that there's a seamless integration of 5G into this existing infrastructure and existing ecosystem. So therefore, the interplay of 5G with established technologies is very important, and also future technologies like time-sensitive networking. OPC UA, of course, is the middleware solution of choice for the factories of the future. Also here the question is, how can I transmit OPC UA or 5G? And also digital twins. I mean, this is in general a huge topic, right? What does it mean for a 5G network? Can we have a digital twin for a 5G network? Can we have a digital twin for a 5G device? And can we use these digital twins to somehow automate also the integration, the management, the monitoring, and so on? So these are some of the things we've been working on already. And of course, there's still more work to be done here. The same applies to IT integration. So traditionally, mobile networks come from the telco domain. So they have their own management frameworks. Usually there are experts that have studied telecommunications with a lot of knowledge. These are very flexible and scalable networks. But the constraints in an enterprise setting are different, right? So here with our enterprise IT systems, maybe the level of expertise is not as high as in the telco domain. So somehow we have to make sure that we can also integrate, for example, a private network into the existing enterprise IT environment. So for that, for example, there have been some work, some activities on exposing capabilities and features of a 5G network to the enterprise, but also then we've done some work on how to securely integrate such a network into the existing environment. And of course, there are specific standards and frameworks for this in the OT industry, like IEC 62443 is a relevant standard here. And we have to see how does this fit together with security, how it is done in the mobile network space. A lot is also about creating awareness for industrial 5G, educating people. So given talks like the one today, so we are also actively reaching out to the different regions, to different organizations to just inform people about the opportunities of 5G in the industrial domain, but also maybe what still needs to be done. And here we have triggered quite a number of activities. And of course, we are also, it's very important for us that we are closely collaborating with other organizations around the globe. Because 5G ACI is not alone. There are many other relevant organizations. The list is also not complete. But it's important that there's no double work being done, and at the same time that the different activities seamlessly fit together. So 3GPP, for example, is a major organization, of course. We are a market representation partner of 3GPP. We have collaborations with regional 5G initiatives like 5GMF in Japan, 5G Forum in Korea, but also with relevant organizations in the OT side, like the OPC Foundation, the Industrial Internet Consortium, or the Flexible Factory Partner Alliance, which is again a Japanese initiative. So I mentioned the testbeds already. There are many testbeds ongoing also outside of 5G ACIA, but in 5G ACIA we have established a testbed program. So we have approximately 10 testbeds that have been approved already. And the idea is that different members, and to some extent also non-member organizations, can come together to jointly build up a testbed, to evaluate 5G in reality, to implement some use cases, and then also to share the learnings and the experience with the other members, and to some extent also with the general public, if you want. And just two examples here is one testbed here that is run by IFAC in Magdeburg, Nokia, Rohde & Schwarz, and DEMAG. So they are focusing on intralogistics, material handling use cases, where wireless connectivity, of course, makes a lot of sense. It's about network testing, but also then performance validation and to see what performance can we really achieve in a real-world production environment. Because it's one thing to have it in a lab demo from desk A to desk B, and it's a different thing to have it in a real-world production environment, which looks a bit more complex here. And another example is a testbed I'm very familiar with that has been run in a Bosch factory in Reutlingen. This is one of our semiconductor factories. Semiconductor manufacturing is very special, of course, so we were investigating if there's any interference, for example, from the 5G system on the production processes, but we were also working on use cases like cloudification of automated guided vehicles, taking the intelligence from the vehicle, putting it into the edge cloud, closing the control loop over the air, also industrial LAN and TSN over 5G. And of course, we are also going public again. So these are some pictures from Hannover Messe this year with a big booth there. And also, if you just look at our booths at these events, you can see the evolution, right? So the first Hannover Messe, we had one white paper maybe that we could distribute and some coffee and some chocolates that you could get. And now we had a lot of demos. You could meet the experts here for discussions. There were video presentations showing how 5G has been tested in different environments. So you can really experience that we are getting closer to reality. And of course, this is not the end. This was just Hannover. We also went to Achema this year in Frankfurt. We went to Chicago for Hannover Messe USA just a month ago. And next year, there's more things coming up. So this is where we're coming from. And so where we are today. First of all, let's look at 5G in general. At the top, you can see some global numbers, right? So 5G, also in the consumer space, is a reality today. So there are more and more live 5G networks available, and this refers here to the major public networks. I think the numbers here are from April, so now probably we even have more. The number is a bit smaller for so-called 5G standalone networks. Now, standalone means that we don't need a legacy 4G network. Initially, usually, it's a combination of 4G and 5G for the public networks, but in the future it will be then 5G standalone. So that's still a bit lagging behind, but it's a natural evolution. What is very impressive, but by the end of 2022, there will be probably 35% population coverage. That means 35% of the population worldwide will have access to 5G. And what is the most impressive figure here from my point of view is the last one here. So if you look at a specific market, a specific country, which is very advanced to some extent, maybe South Korea here. So the monthly data traffic per subscriber has been already more than 24 gigabytes in February this year. So I'm not sure about you, so I have a 1 gigabyte data plan, and usually it's enough for me per month. So 24 is really impressive, but maybe I'm also not the typical user here. So if you look at the bottom, that's more related to industrial 5G. So here we have some numbers for private networks. Private networks are a bit harder to count because nobody really knows how many private networks there are, right? So, but the estimate here is in 2021, these were like 1,400 worldwide, which is still a decent figure. But there will be a 10 times increase by 2026, most likely. So the growth rate certainly is very steep. And if you look at IoT connections, and this is not just 5G, of course, this is all types of connections, right? There's also a strong increase in the next couple of years. So things are starting and taking off. I mentioned already the different versions of the standard, right? So release 15, the first 5G release, 16, 17 have been specified already. 18 is currently being specified and standardized, and that's then called 5G Advanced. So just another marketing term if you want. But what we have today, if you look at the products, the infrastructure, the chipsets, is still release 15. It's the first release, even though we have the standards here already. And that's still a thing we have to work on if we want to really unlock the full potential of industrial 5G. Because here the focus was on the consumer domain. The industrial IoT features, the first wave comes with release 16, improvements then, positioning, and so on with release 17. And release 18 will enable completely new use cases like augmented reality, extended reality, and so on. And of course, for these use cases, there's also a lot of potential in the industrial domain. If you look at the regulatory situation, so that's very much related to private networks again. There's a lot of things, a lot of momentum behind this as well. Germany was one of the first countries to allocate some spectrum for enterprises. So this was very, to some extent also risky for the German Federal Network Agency, but it is something that we see now in more and more countries all over the world, right? In the United States, we have CBRS, which is a bit different, but leads to the same result. United Kingdom, soon after Germany, also allocated spectrum for private networks. We have Japan with a lot of interest, a lot of momentum behind local 5G, South Korea, and just India has been added recently. So it's getting, if you want, the new normal for regulation. And of course, this also pushes these developments a bit. If you look at the campus licenses that have been granted in Germany, so the Bundesnetzagentur regularly publishes the latest numbers. So then we have more than 230, the last time I looked at it at least. You could say that's still a fairly, not too big number for Germany, right? A private network is a local network, but it's also growing and developing. And there are reasons why we are not fully there yet. If you look at 26 gigahertz, also here spectrum is available, the numbers are even lower, but also this is not surprising because there's simply no equipment available that you could use in a reasonable way at this high frequency. So therefore these are mainly test networks that are being realized here. So 5G SAA has published and is continuing to publish a lot of white papers where you can learn more about different aspects. Some examples are shown here. In the interest of time, I'll quickly skip this. And just if we deep dive into 2 or 3 topics, one that I want to highlight here is our work on TSN, time-sensitive networking over 5G. TSN, of course, is a big topic for industrial communication in general, will be the future of industrial Ethernet. And the nice thing is that 5G, starting with release 16, will support many of these TSN features out of the box. So that means a 5G network to the outside world will look very much like a virtual TSN bridge. You can use the same mechanisms for time synchronization, for traffic prioritization, and so on. And this makes it very easy then for a developer, for example, to make use and to develop something for a 5G network, and is the basis for an easy and seamless migration and integration. That's the theory, right? Because what we are still missing is the implementation of these features, but hopefully with release 16 that will come. Also, quality of service is, of course, a big topic, and that's one of the key differentiators of 5G compared to most, if not all, other wireless technologies. Quality of service support, there are dedicated mechanisms for defining quality of service characteristics, to also implement, enforce quality of service, and to monitor quality of service. Right, and especially for industrial applications, that's key because we have real-time requirements, we need low latency, we need high reliability, and so on. So quality of service is really what makes a difference then. And also here we have done some work describing how this works basically, right? If you have a mobile robot and you have some centralized guidance systems, you need some dedicated and task quality of service in between, and we have described here, for example, how this really works so that people can get understanding and also establish a sufficient level of trust in this. And another recent activity is on industrial 5G devices. So if you want to develop an industrial 5G device, I strongly recommend to have a look at this. We developed architectural blueprints, if you want, on a high level for such devices. Example can be seen here, right? And there's not a one-size-fits-all solution. The optimal architecture and so on depends on different aspects, like the type of device. Is it a sensor? Is it a PLC? Is it a camera? It depends on the authentication method that you would like to use and other things. And also this is outlined a little bit here in a white paper. And also gateways, of course, are important. That's the figure on the upper left. So you can have a gateway on different layers, on the Ethernet layer, on the IP layer, and so on. And also this is something we have discussed and summarized a little bit here. So where are we heading to? What is the future? And this is a slide I've shown several times already, but it's updated today. So consumer 5G, that's a reality. I'm not sure how many of you have a 5G smartphone. I have one in the meantime. I guess many of you as well. And if you buy a new smartphone, it certainly will have 5G connectivity, I believe. Right? So that's a reality today, but it's a simple story. That's the evolutionary path. With industrial 5G, it's revolutionary. So we need to build everything up from scratch. And of course, it will change the way we are doing production and we are building a factory, for example. But the nice thing is there's a lot of additional revenue, a lot of business potential to be unlocked, whereas here it's more securing the existing business for the existing players. And if you look at the status today, so then we are really getting ready for takeoff. So we're not there yet. It's not that thousands of factories in Germany are equipped with a 5G network already, right? But we're getting very close. And from my perspective, 2023 will mark the beginning of a change here. So once we get release 16, then we can really see maybe the hockey stick taking up. There are some reasons why we are not there yet. And I outlined most of these aspects already, right? We started later. 5G SAA has been established only in 2018, for instance. We are waiting for release 16. So whenever you have the opportunity to talk to a chipset provider, so ask him for release 16 features, that may help. We also need support for new business models, new operating models. Also here, the ecosystem has to find a suitable approach. The performance validation testing is ongoing with all the testbed activities that we have. We have simply different innovation cycles. We need a complete ecosystem that has to grow from scratch. And in general, it's a little bit this chicken egg challenge, but also seeing that more and more components become available, more and more things are being demonstrated, I think we are working very well on overcoming this chicken egg challenge. So what are we currently doing? Also in 5G SAA, and this reflects a little bit the general developments, right? So we're still looking in use cases requirements, but more and more also in combining 5G with other building blocks, like edge computing, like artificial intelligence. We recently started a new activity looking into visual video analytics, basically. So how can we connect cameras in a production environment with 5G, and what can we do better? Shop floor integration remains an important topic. Combination of OPC UA, I mentioned this already with 5G. Here we have a new activity ongoing in collaboration with the OPC Foundation. I mentioned the use cases requirements. This is something new, so that we focus also more and more on market tracking and forecasting the market. At the end of the day, everybody is interested in doing business, and that's what everybody wants to know. And now that the market is gaining traction, so we also spend more effort on this. And of course, we also still want to inform everybody and educate, especially also end users, how to use industrial 5G, how 5G may help to solve concrete business problems. So also this is something we intensify a bit more in future. So we are back to face-to-face meetings. I mentioned this already. So that's just a preview of the main plenary meetings that we will have. The next one, our General Assembly plenary meeting, will be in Frankfurt, not so far away from here, of course, the beginning of December. Then we've planned a virtual meeting because we were a bit skeptical if February will work with a face-to-face meeting. So this will still be virtual. And then the plan is to be in Tokyo in Japan in May next year. We've planned this for a long time. There's a lot of interest and strong pull from the Japanese community, and hopefully in May then next year it works that we can have a major meeting there as well. And if somebody here is not a member yet, but would be interested in maybe joining one of these meetings as a guest to see what is really happening there and so on, you're more than welcome to do this. Just reach out to me or to Jackie here from the 5G SAI office, and we would be happy to provide you with the required information. Also, can visit our website. We have a small booth there, can provide you with more information, and that's all I have prepared for today. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this great overview concerning 5G and looking into the future and what will come. And so from your, first of all, are there any questions from your side? Gibt's Fragen? So what I would like to know is you talked about also about OPC UA, and if I understand this right, the combination or the integration between OPC UA and 5G. So what could this offer on opportunities?
I mean, both technologies will play a very important role in future, right? OPC UA is already being introduced, but there are also still topics to be discussed, right? Like field level communication, how can we combine OPC UA with TSN and so on? And then of course the next natural question is, how can we combine it with 5G so that we can, that it seamlessly fits together? And this is something we started to discuss. You could say in a simple level, right? If we have TSN over 5G, then I just do OPC over TSN over 5G. So that would be a straightforward approach. But if you look at the details here and there, it's a bit more complicated than this, and this is what we are trying to understand all together in close collaboration again with the OPC Foundation.
Okay. Do you see still a need for more standardization or for more standards in this whole smart manufacturing area to really use the full potential of 5G?
Yeah, I mean, standardization for 5G itself, right? That's a permanent story.
Yeah.
So 5G standardization is never finished. There are new releases coming up. And there will be new features with every new release, which also may provide value to the industrial domain. Not only, there are also other domains, of course, but that's ongoing. I mentioned release 18, right, with a stronger focus on AR, XR, VR, and of course, if you have AR that works well, there's a lot of things you can do in a factory. Beyond 3GPP and 5G standardization, I mean, that's also what we're investigating. I think there's not much more needed to get started. What we are currently looking at is, for example, certification. So do we need some special certification procedures? So here we have some exchange also with other organizations like GCF. I'm not sure if the community here is aware of this, the Global Certification Forum, or also CTIA. So these are established certification organizations coming from the mobile industry, more or less. but where we are jointly discussing if there can be and should be some specific certification procedures for industrial 5G,
Okay.
which then may help to get the ecosystem up and running.
Okay.